then we are going to go into the meat of all this. I also really encourage all of you, if you are interested, to join my personal Discord server, because I'm going to make it some kind of always platform for artwork. So even outside of class, that can bring more material for you to practice and find some kind of art community. All right. So what's very important, specifically for this semester, when you start working on those 6 pieces, I want you to find a thematic, and I want you to find a voice, a visual language, because that's the step for you to start developing. And I'm going to talk a lot, but you interrupt me if you have questions, obviously. I want you to develop stories that you tell visually, and I want you to develop a language that you use to tell those stories. So what I'm talking about right now is really personal style. Personal style is not something I like to... it's not the way I like to word it. Because personal style, I kind of associate it easily with people coming to me and justifying weaknesses in their work by calling it their style somehow, or using the style word as a child, my God, as a shield to protect themselves from critics, and therefore to protect themselves from progress, if it makes sense. So I talk about visual identity because I find that more accurate. I find that more broad. And in visual identity, I like to talk about the things that influence you in your work. We talk about that in the digital painting class a bit. But this is really at the core of the illustration class, because as we discussed a lot in digital painting, in concept art, you prioritize concept. You are less about personal expression within your art style, and more about creating those concepts and making them visually available for people in the production line to be able to work on those concepts. So you generate ideas and concepts by using your visual language. In illustration, your personal voice matters. So again, I'm going to say style. Your personal style matters a lot. The way you tell the story. The same way when you read a book, think about it. Think about any book that you have read and enjoyed. I'm going to take something really popular, just to put everything easy. The Lord of the Rings. Most of you have not read The Lord of the Rings, and I don't blame you. It's a long journey, and it requires dedication, and it is at times really difficult to read. And most of you, if not all of you, have seen the movies, and usually that's already it does the job anyway. I have read The Lord of the Rings a couple of times, and that's a book that I always loved, but I will not read it again today because of the style. I have had enough, and the type of literature that attracts me today is a lot more direct, a lot more blunt, a lot more brutal, a lot more that's not what I enjoy reading. But what I'm talking about is that same story the story of the Lord of the Ring can be said. That story can be told in so many ways, and in fact, the fact that there is already an anime movie that exists, the fact that there is a trilogy that everyone knows, the fact that there is the books, the fact that there are the comic books, you know, it's already many different ways to tell that story, and you could tell one story, and that would be an interesting exercise to have one story told by 5 different writers, for example. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about when we talk about illustration, is that you are that writer, you are that person who are going to tell that story, and you have to choose the word you use, you have to choose your language, you have to develop that. And I know that's a bit abstract, but this is really what makes the difference between an illustrator. Well, I'm going to make jokes about some French whatever, but there is a good illustrator and there is a bad illustrator. But let's not, I'm just joking about that. What does a good illustrator do? What does a bad illustrator do? But that joke only goes so far. So in my class, what I want to see growing is your awareness of your personal identity and an awareness of the word you choose when you talk visually. And I say word, but obviously I'm talking about images. And so where does that visual identity, where does it lay? Where do you find it? Where do you go? Where do you dig to find this? And we are going to have full classes on that topic, okay? But just shortly, you find it in everything that influences you, everything that somehow enters yourself. Anything that any movie you watch will have an influence on you, because no matter what, you watch it, whether you liked it, whether you did not like it, it's always, any art that you are exposed to, any book you read, any game you play, same thing, even games that you don't like, for example. You can play a game that has a huge influence of you because of the art style and you love it, and consciously or subconsciously it starts to influence the way you paint, the way you draw. But it can be also negative influence, and I'm talking about, okay, follow me on that, I'm talking about positive, negative influence. So negative influence in a sense of you see something and you are like, whoa, I really don't want to do that, I don't like this, and so therefore that's a positive, negative influence, because the positive aspect is that it helps you knowing what you don't want, okay? So no matter what, everything around you that you interact with is going to define you, it's going to define you as an artist. And so what I think is really, really strong, and what is really important to notice and pay attention to right now in what I'm saying, is the fact that you need to pay attention to the artist as much, if not more. And when I say you need to pay attention to the artist, I mean the artist that you are. You need to pay attention to who you are as an artist, more than that one single piece that you are working on and struggling with. Am I making sense with that? Because you are the person who is going to generate, to produce, to create artwork. And you need to take care of yourself, because you need yourself to function, you need yourself to have things to say, to have things to express. And that will lead us to a conversation about AI at some point, because I don't think machines have a need to express something. You know what I mean? So that's another topic. Let's not digress to AI just right now. But you are a person. You are a person with things that you experience. I talk about the books that influence you, the movies, the game, but also the people, the things you see, the things you go through, all this kind of stuff. And it generates, and we talked about that in digital painting a bit, I think. it generates what I like to call your personal code. You know, every little influence, positive or negative, or in the middle, um, creates some kind of big number that is different from everyone else. And that's you right there. So in a way, we never reinvent anything. It's very difficult to be really original nowadays. And at the same time, if you look at it through the other angle, it's impossible not to be original. Because no matter what, you are unique. No matter what, you have accumulated through life up to this point so many things that influence you and that could, if you know how to do that, express themselves into your artwork. That makes you completely unique. So yes, nothing is original. We are all the same. We are all humans. We all, you know, a psychoanalyst, a psychanalyst will have a lot of fun explaining to you how much we have patterns and how much we are, at the end, maybe all the same. But we are also completely unique. And so you need to find that because it will affect you in ways that are a bit complex. It will affect you in your creative process. It will make you a better artist to be able to listen to what's unique, what you have to say, what's your voice, you know. And it will also make the difference between you and someone else professionally when you apply for a job. I'm going to give you a very quick, simple example of this. A lot of people think that to work for a specific client, like Magic the Gathering, for example, they think that they have to imitate magic cards to convince the art directors that they can do magic cards in the style of Magic. But if you're an art director at Magic the Gathering, you know that if you want artists to do some magic cards, they are already here. We have them, they are here, you know, the magic artists are all here. So when they hire someone new, they hire that person because that person can do something that the others do not do. And that's where we talk about personal style. That's where your own personal code, the things that you do in your own way that are a bit different, will serve you creatively and professionally. Am I making sense with all that? And again, this class is an introduction to illustration, and I just want to step into the illustration class with, you know, with the mentality at the right place. I want my students to be mentally at the right place when it comes to illustration and why we do that. If you are sitting at a table and someone says something like, oh, this rabbit is blue, and then you sit down and you say, yes, this rabbit is blue, and another guy says, this rabbit is blue, I'm sitting here, you know, and I'm probably going to go talk to other people because I'll get tired really quick of just people repeating the same thing over and over. But if someone at the table start to talk about the quality of the sunlight on a wall made of red bricks, whatever, suddenly something drops at the table that is different. Something that creates diversity, variety, something that makes the conversation evolve. I think my example is terrible right now because it just sounds like a madhouse when I describe that conversation at the table. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is no point repeating something that someone has said right before you. If you are part of a conversation, and if you think that the art community, the art field, the professional field, is a bunch of people communicating with their artwork, if you decide to sit at this table, it's more interesting if you do it with something to say that is personal. At that table, you could have people who just try to say what they think everyone wants to hear. That's not very healthy, because that means you are not really yourself at that table then. Someone else could try to say what they think everyone wants to say. And the comparison I'm making right now is by people who are just trying to imitate someone's artwork or trying to make sure that their artwork fit a specific case. One of the risks with this is that you risk to forget. One of the risks is that you could forget yourself, and in fact the table would be missing on what's personal about you. Because we all have it, and that's the thing. We all have it, and we get concerned about a lot of things. And one of the things that concerns or makes artists a bit anxious all the time is, it's not the case for everyone, but there is for a lot of artists some kind of need for validation. A need to create some artwork that will be appreciated. And if that appreciation does not come, there is frustration, and sometimes it leads to even some kind of feeling of depression and stuff like that. Because, and it's even more true now that we are at the age of social media and places where everything should be instantly rewarded. I know so many students who post their artwork online, and their artwork is good, and they get one like, and they're like, yeah, whatever, it's really a thing. It's really a thing. It's affecting people, and so the artist's need for reward, for recognition, is something that is also linked to the imposter syndrome. And all those things are at play when you start to create. And in a way, it is safer to just try to say what you think everyone wants to hear, because it's less personal. And so therefore, if you have to deal with some kind of failure or lack of recognition, it's not touching you as much as if, as in a situation where we have I was going to say we have a cat in the chat, but the thing is that cat in French is actually the word chat. So I just punned myself. So the effort of being personal with your artwork, of being honest, of speaking your voice, comes with emotional risk, in a way. And I'm saying this because, as far as emotions, I'm perfectly dead inside, I never had them, I don't know what I'm talking about. But for everyone else, sometimes it's difficult to get excited about something and to share it and to find out that, that feeling of, well, nobody cares. But I want to remind all of you that every artist I know who are successful today have been through I'm just sharing my work and nobody gives a fuck. Every professional artist I know have been through that. I can tell you some of my students who were messaging me a few years ago completely depressed because they were sharing their work and no one was paying attention to it. And today they work for Magic the Gathering. So I'm not saying don't listen if nobody cares for your artwork in the next 40 years. Maybe in 40 years you should consider doing something else, professionally at least. But because sometimes it is an indication of, lack of quality, and I'm really putting that like in between quotes because I'm not here to judge that. But be aware that this is normal. It is as normal as the ugly phase in an artwork. It's funny because sometimes the experience in life is very comparable to the experience of the creative process itself. So in a way, your life experience with your artwork as an artist, of putting your work in there and trying to build yourself as an artist, easily compares to the creative process of a specific piece as well. So maybe you are one specific piece that you are working on. But the way I compare this is there is an ugly phase too when you work on an image, on an illustration. Always. There is always an ugly phase. There is always a moment where it does look like shit. And the problem is, and that's where the ego comes in the line sometimes. And I'm pro-ego, by the way, so that's another conversation. But I don't think the ego is automatically nocive. I think it's a misconception of people who don't really understand the word ego. But a lot of students just give up during the ugly phase of the creative process. forgetting that every piece of every artist, every masterpiece that you look up online, when you look at, you follow your favorite artist and this artist posts something, and you look at her work and you are amazing by it, and you forget that at some point, what she was doing on that specific piece looked like crap. How many times did she erase? How many times did she comment how many times did she have to adjust this and that, So it is the same thing than when you watch a tutorial and you are like, oh, I can't believe how this artist is painting. He's doing all those things like crazy. It's so fast. It's so awesome. Well, this artist also choose to post that specific video online. That means that that's a video where this professional artist thinks, okay, that looks good, I'm posting it. But there are also a lot of things that this artist is not posting because it does not look as good, So that's why it's interesting to look at artists when they stream, because you see the slow pace, you see the struggle, and you see the hours, sometimes put into the work, and with the risk of it not looking great. And that's also okay. It's also okay to have terrible pieces. There are a lot of pieces I don't put in my portfolio. And to go back to the portfolio conversation, I think I put in my portfolio probably 10% of the artwork I do, my online portfolio, because a lot of the artwork I do is not something I'm excessively enthusiastic about. A lot of it is just pleasing a client that have specific requirement on a specific piece, but it does not really represent me. So I don't put it in my portfolio. Not that it's good, not that it's bad, not that it's just, I choose what I want to present of myself. The same way I'm not wearing my pink pajamas with little bunnies on it when I show up in class right now, because I decided, to fit the role I'm deciding to play. So of course I'm all dressed in black, drinking liquid death and talking with a French accent. That is completely fake, because we all know that I am from Texas. So, do you all understand what I'm talking about and why this is really fundamental, and why this matters? Maybe what I'm telling you today right now is more important than any technical advice I will ever give you on your illustrations. Because hi everyone, there are a few people communicating in the chat, so for the ones who are watching the stream right now, I'm actually in class with my students, and we are talking about illustration because we are starting a semester. So that's what's going on right now. And that's funny because I look this way to talk to the chat because I have the stream right there, but the camera is right here no matter what, So I was talking about ugly face, and I just started to think, we also all have our ugly faces. We are all babies, We were all ugly babies at some point. We all puked on the floor. I think. Sorry to be like graphic like that, but we all, as humans, we all have good parts and bad parts. We all have things that we show, things that we don't, things that, and I really, the more I live, the more I go through life, the more I realize that there is a direct parallel between your portfolio, not as a PDF, not as your technical portfolio, but when I say portfolio, I'm talking about something a bit bigger than that. I'm talking about the artwork that you decide to display and share with people, and that is your artwork. And I think there is a direct parallel between your life as a human and that portfolio. Maybe I'm a bit crazy, maybe I'm too, maybe I need to connect things. Maybe I'm too French. Maybe I'm just making everything existential. Where in fact it's just, do your fucking concept art and send it to the client, do your job, and then go watch TV, And there is also a lot of things to say about that, because it's very important as an artist that sometimes you just disconnect and just go play video games instead of focusing on your creative process. It's important. But as a French existentialist, I will call myself a Sunday existentialist, just once a week. Um, I will say that even if I sit down playing a video game, I cannot help it that need to play that video game will be triggered by something personal. And that's the case for all of you. You know, there are games you don't play, there are games you play. So what leads you to play the game you decide to play? That's a good question. And I think, for me, for example, it has to be dark as fuck. I can't help it. It has to be like sinister. It has to be called Dark Souls, or something like it. That's what will make me want to. That's where I chill. That sounds sinister, but that's what it is. I chill in the dark. There is a car on the parking lot that is just going off, and oh, by the way, during this semester I will also make active reports on the events on the parking lot, because this is very important. Ask yourself those questions. I think and again, I'm not joking when I'm talking about existentialism right now. I think the work you are going to produce this semester, the work you are going to create, instead of making you start on that project right now, what I want you to start working on yourself right now by questioning what you like, what you want to do, where you see yourself in 10 years. Those are real questions. When you go see a movie at the movie theater, or when you pick a movie on Netflix or whatever, what makes you pick what you pick? And those are real questions. So you do not have to question everything in your life for this class. It's completely fine. If you're at the store and you find yourself, if I see any of you at the store this evening and I find you in front of the Pringles because you don't know if you want to buy the blue Pringles or the red Pringles, I will feel guilty because I know I asked you to question everything you do. But I mean, not to this level, okay? You don't have to question your taste in Pringles. I think life is okay when it's simple as well. But on everything that is related to your creative process, I want you to start questioning this. And I want you to not forget next week to keep questioning those things. I see it everywhere. I have some friends who always have stupid conversations. One of them is, what's your favorite color of cars? That's typical for people when they get bored. Would you own a red car? Would you own a yellow car? Are all your cars white? Are all your cars gold? Why do you pick a certain color? How do you dress? Do you dress full of colors, or do you try to tame down the colors sometimes? And we can go deeper with that, and I really don't want to be, my role is to be a professor and teach art, and I don't want to send any of you into some kind of existential struggle actually, but I was going to say, what are your traumas? What are your worst moments? Do they influence you? What are your best moments? I'm going to cover that really quick by some positive stuff. What are your best moments in life? Do you have moments in your life that you think have visually inspired you more than anything else, for example? It's very interesting. My colors are very desaturated. Used to be. I saturate more now. But I grew up in an environment, in a house full of saturated colors. My mother is nuts with colors. There was some blue, some green, some red, some yellow everywhere, to a point where there was a beautiful wood table. She had to paint it bright blue, and I was like, what's going on with that? So what's your relationship with colors, for example? And I'm going to change the topic because I think you get the idea that I really want you to... Can I turn up the volume a little bit? Okay, maybe I'm not loud enough, or maybe I should plug the mic. If I do that... I don't know if that's gonna work. Is it better if I talk in that? Does it change anything? Well, I don't know. People in the chat let me know if it's if it's working better or better or less or whatever. What was I saying? Okay. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I will try to remember that I have a Yeti mic and that can be used for speaking into it, So the other thing that I'm talking about your visual style and the things that influence you to generate your visual style, but your visual identity. But another thing that you have to ask yourself when it comes to illustration, and that is different from concept art, is what stories do you have to tell also? What stories do you want to tell? What do you have? What do you want? What do you need to tell? What do you want to tell? That's a fundamental question. I don't think I'm going to make a very, very broad statement, something a bit embarrassing because this definitely can be questioned and talked about, but part of me thinks that you should not be an illustrator if you do not have stories to tell. I think one of the fundamental difference between illustrator and concept art, and of course it crosses, I do concept art, I do illustration, but one of the main difference is that the illustrator have a story to tell where that's not true. That's not true. I'm going to completely take back what I was saying. I'm going to tell you what I was about to say, and I'm going to tell you why I think it's not true. I was going to say that the concept artist tells someone else's story. You are given a project, and you have to work on a specific project, and you conceptualize things. This is not a concept art class, so we are not going to go in depth into this. But on the opposite, I was going to say that the illustrator tells their own story, but that's absolutely not true. That's not true. The definition of illustration is that you illustrate a story, but how many times did I illustrate stories that are not mine? Every time I do a book cover, I'm illustrating the story of someone else. So my statement was just inaccurate. But I guess what I was trying to get to, and that is accurate, is that as an illustrator, you have to be able to tell a story with your own personal voice and language. So when I say you should not be an illustrator if you don't have any stories to tell, it's because I think having stories to tell, having personal stuff to express, it gives the energy that you need to generate artwork that is personal. I can talk only about myself with this. That's my personal experience, and yours is different. But I found out that I always had stories to tell. Always. When I was a kid, I would create weird stories of wizards and goblins and whatever was going on. I don't know, I don't have the tapes, but as soon as I was starting to talk, I will tell stories and I will record myself telling stories to a little cassette on a cassette recorder. And then growing a bit older in class, we had to write stories. 3-4 pages of, I don't know what it's called in English, but in French it was called rédaction, where we do have to make some creative writing a bit. And that's what I love to do the most, and I was doing it well. And I think there was a connection with the fact that I loved it and I was doing it well. I think there is a link between those stuff. But for a long, long time, my need to tell stories was expressing itself through words and text. When I was 11, I wrote a 5-page story about a little pianist who, every time he was playing piano, People who will ask him to play, and he will play a lot. But in the story, he starts to realize that the more he plays, every time he hits a key on the piano, it creates a little scar on someone. It creates a cut. And so people want him to play so bad, but at the same time, the more he plays, the more he's hurting people. Yeah, no shit, 11 years old. Like, let's talk to a therapist right now. And so that kid decides to take all the wounds and all the cuts on himself when he plays, and finally just dies way too young because he cannot stop playing even if it hurts. So when you drop that, when you are 11 years old and you drop that in class, that's usually a situation where the professor calls your parents. And that's, kind of what happened. Where I'm going with this is that I had that need to tell stories. This is why I create my own role-playing games. This is why I was always a game master. This is why I write books. This is why I write poetry. This is why I do a lot of things that are based on words. And somehow my career, my entire professional career, was dedicated to images, which is the other aspect of, once again, telling stories. And I think illustration is a lot about that. It's about language. It's about communicating stories in the best way possible. And that leads me to the other part of this talk, that we will develop a lot more later. It is composition. And of course you took my composition classes in digital painting, but we will dive a lot more in composition this semester. Okay, and how you want to tell one story with one image, and basically the art of telling stories with images. Composition is this. That's the definition of composition. Composition is, I have a story to tell, whether it's yours or the story of someone else that you are illustrating. I have a story to tell. How do I tell that story? What do I put together? What kind of system do I build to tell that story the way I want to tell that story? And that's why you need to be a storyteller, a visual storyteller in illustration. I'm not saying you should be able to write. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, as an illustrator, you should be good at telling stories. We talked about that a lot in class. We talked about, the idea that even the way we read from left to right has an influence on the way we perceive an image. And that someone coming from the left talking to someone from the right is hitting some kind of, he meets that person, but when it comes from the right to the left, then it's more an idea of escape. And I mean, composition class is coming later. I'm not starting this right now. But I wanted to share with you all some images, random images of mine. And of course, in this class, I will share also the work of a lot of other artists. Because I don't want you to take classes where it's just all about me sharing my own perspective on stuff. I want to look at other stuff with you and just see different angles and perspectives on everything. But I'm going to share some stuff right now, some of my work. Once I'm able to actually wake up and do things right. Okay. So again, I will look crazy again when I look up in the sky, like I'm summoning some weird shit stuff. It's only because I'm putting all of your cameras up. So when I look up, I'm not summoning stuff, I'm just looking up. And I need... this. Okay. So there are a few compositions and ways to tell stories. I picked those pieces specifically for today. I'm afraid, let me know if I talked about this one in digital painting last semester. As far as composition, I don't know if I did that or not. I'm going to talk about it quick, okay? But basically I was asked to paint a vampire with dangerous, excessively mysterious, and this is a kind of cross between a vampire and a ninja, and I don't remember exactly all the, all the details of the brief, but what I know is that because this is a magic card, I knew this was going. I'm just sharing right now with you like the things that go through my mind when I have to compose something, okay? And so I knew that as a magic card, that's what I will probably deal with as far as size of stuff, and I knew that the size of the card itself would be like small like this. So I knew there was no way we will identify that character as a vampire, because if I want that posture on the chimney and stuff, it means I have to zoom out a bit, and it means that we will not see the fangs, and at small size it's just ridiculous. So I had to find a way to tell everyone this is a vampire without painting the one thing that allows you to identify a vampire, which are the fangs. And so what I did is that I created a composition that has everything that suggests that it's a vampire, everything else. If I cannot have the fangs, I decided to gather everything I could. And so what we have is we have a character that is dressed in black. So it's, dark and mystery and creature of the night. Has some confidence, is a bit threatening. There is a moon, because, moonlight and shit, vampire stuff. Bats, that also tells us vampire. I also wanted that weird cape that kind of disappear in smoke, that, that weird, it's just weird the way it goes. That's also creating some kind of surreal aspect to this character. And I was like, okay, this is cool, but I'm sure I can take those things even a bit further. And what I did is that I decided that this dagger that she has, because she's an assassin, so that dagger talks about the fact that she's a killer. That's one thing. But it also comes and complete in the composition. I know that this is weird, but that was me having fun. It comes and kind of complete that missing angle that you have on the moon right there. So narratively, she kind of took a piece of the night and killed people with it. Does that, there is this kind of stuff. And also, obviously, that dagger looks like fangs. So my goal in this was to put a fang into the composition, not having to paint it on her face, but it's still right there, It still says that shape in itself says vampire. And then, you add little stuff like little windows in the back saying that some people are still awake, so she can go and feed herself, and, things like that. And of course, in the composition, she's really, she's higher up, so she's ready to fall on someone like that, coming from the sky and just be done with it. Do you see what I'm talking about with this? This is my language. I was asked to paint a dangerous, ninja-ish, assassin vampire at night. That's what I was asked to do. And what I did is what you see and what I just explained. With a system that I put in place that nobody else will have. I'm not saying it's better or worse or anything like that. I'm saying this is my way to tell my interpretation of the story I was told to do. Funny enough, this piece was nominated for an award in the Spectrum magazine. And I'm glad it was, because if I was to choose a piece of artwork of mine, I'm very difficult with my own artwork. I'm not very appreciative of it most of the time, but I like the fang stuff that I did with that. I like that symbolism of removing a piece of the moon and use it as a weapon. You know, I did like that, so I kind of liked that, and I was glad that it was kind of seen by the community of people who liked that piece. And this one is interesting because it's a piece that came after. It came after, like way later, in fact. This one is, I think, 2019, and this one is 2021, I think. So 2 years later. And what I did with this is that I kind of recreated what I learned from the story I have told before. And that's the reason why I'm also showing you this one. It's because I do think it's interesting to see that through the stories you tell, the little stories you tell through your artwork, you also teach yourself your own language. And here we are now. I did something else, like we have the two fangs, definitely. I did that fang stuff on a piece for Magic as well. Let me find that. I think it's also interesting. I was once again asked to paint a vampire. I don't know why I'm asked to paint vampires all the time. That's weird, right? So, same thing with this one. That's Olivia Voldaren for Magic the Gathering, waking up on her wedding day. And same thing, I could not, other than the fact that her skin looks dead and that everything is blood red and that there is like fang shapes, I did put in her coffin 2 daggers that really just scream, here are 2 fangs, I'm playing with shapes. I'm telling stories by using specific shapes. So it's happening here as well, but on that, some of the things that were fun for me was to match the hair with the moon in the back, using this image is interesting because it's completely blunt and direct. Everything is just direct language. The daggers, she's threatening, she's proud, she's standing on a roof. The moon is strong, her hair is matching the direction of the moon, and obviously there is something else that people want to know about it, which is, what the fuck is this red blade? And so this is made for that. This is made for people to be like, wait a second, where did she find that? What is it? What's going on? So we have the story, we have the power, we see the character, we get that. But that blade that she carries, that's big deal, and we know it. We see it, and so that's why the color of this blade, obviously the crimson blood color. That blade is also going against the diagonal of the picture. Everything is made for it to be like this big elephant in the room right there. And of course, that's part of the character, the backstory of the character. It's telling us that this character has a backstory. It's once again just all about telling stories right there. And when I say telling stories, I am not saying that you have to tell a complete story. In fact, look at this image. We don't know where she was. We don't know who she is. We don't know where she comes from. And we don't know what she is about to do. But we know she has a story. And we know she's on a roof. And we know shit is about to go down. Okay, so in a way, you don't have to give us the complete stories. What's important is that you can imply those stories. And I wanted to share this one with you as well, because this is a different way to compose. This is a different type of commission. Someone is calling me, and again and again and again. I don't like when. This image is different. It's another type of story that I had to tell. It's a story of one specific civilization. So that's part of my first role-playing game called... My fucking god. Stop. I don't want you all to witness what happens when I have to hang up the phone 3 times. And when I finally pick up. So, and yeah, I just... Sorry, I don't mean to be blasphemous in class. You know me by now, right? So... this is an illustration that is talking about an entire people. They are the people, the civilization from the north, as you can tell, because in my role-playing game, in that specific role-playing game, it's a fantasy role-playing game, but the civilizations are very inspired by human civilizations, with a lot of things that I'm crossing and just playing with that, but trying to go full cliché and sometimes just divert the cliché. Anyway, those are the people from Vaelor. They are brutal people from the cold north. Yes, it's cold and he's not wearing a shirt, and that's okay. What I'm saying with that is that they don't care about the cold anymore. Anyway. But this composition is interesting because I'm not telling up specific stories. I'm putting together elements and shapes that are giving information about these people. And you see a sharp blade. You see a horse with red eyes. You see some snow. You see a beautiful face in the back, but crossed with a big scar all over the face. You see visual elements like little circle ornaments and braided hair. You see chainmail. This image is telling you a lot about where those people are at. Even the fort, the kind of castle in the back, is telling you they don't care that much about the French Renaissance, for example. What they need is a building that protects them from the cold, and it's okay if it's square. The shape of the horns that suggest the Viking stuff. The absence of the face of the warrior is because their faces and their identities don't matter for them. But I did something that I thought was also visually, and people don't pick up on this that much until I say it, and usually when I say it, people are like, holy shit, that's cool, I'm going to show that to you right now so you see what I'm talking about. I wanted those characters to be all about death, And I literally painted a character that is faceless, but with a skull on his belt. It's almost as if his head is like not where it should be. It's almost as if he's wearing his own death on his belt buckle because his face is gone, because his personality is gone. Because I wanted to talk about the brutality of these people. That also explains my choice of color. That explains the scars, that explains all that, Those are brutal people. Those are not nice, and this image is showing that, I will share some artwork with you sometime, some of my artwork that is not like one specific shade of darkness, but at the same time, you know very well that, this is my work, this is my personal work. And by the way, and I repeat that every semester, it's not because I do things a certain way that I expect my students. Like, if your artwork is all about colorful mushrooms from space, I have no problem with that. I do not obviously judge the work of my students or grade the work of my students based on my own personal preference. But as far as I'm concerned, I found out for a long time that anything that I do sincerely always goes dark. And because of this, I stopped trying to dodge this. I did not try a lot, to be honest, but I embrace that because this is my voice. This is my language. My voice has that dark sound. It's in there. There was a beep somewhere, and I don't know where it's from. Okay. But I have talked enough for today. So, I'm just going to stop sharing all that. Okay. Does anyone have questions? Things that you want to add? Things that you want to discuss before I let you go? Oops, I'm not supposed to do that. Okay. Yes.
When you said that you want us to extend the week, just thinking about what we want to do for our projects this semester, once we do that, are we allowed to like get started early, start working on the projects,
I missed.
or do you want us to wait?
So you can start working on everything if you want. If you know what you are doing, you can start working on it. No problem. Yeah. So wait a second. I just have a camera issue that I'm trying to fix on. I think that's fixed. Okay, whatever. So, yeah, you can start working on your stuff like as soon as you want. It's absolutely no problem. I just want you to not start without thinking. That's really what I mean by that. Anything else? Okay, so I'm always available on Discord for any of you when you need anything, and I will see you next week. See you. Bye.
See you.
All right, and I'm also going to disconnect the stream. I don't know if it's interesting for everyone to like get a hint of what's happening in class and the conversations we are having, but I'm going to keep sharing it because that's also a way I was explaining that to my students earlier, that's also my way to make the class available for them because they can watch the replays, it creates some materials that they can always go back to. At some point, I think I will start to generate some stronger content that will be actively recorded and not just improvised as we discuss. No, I will not play. I will not play the guitar. Not at all. Out of the question. I keep my guitar for myself. That's another conversation. But I keep my guitar playing for myself because I share so much of my artwork. That I need something I don't share. I need something that I do just for me, and that's guitar right there. I'm not sure. I may come back later tonight if I'm working on a specific piece. I don't know. So all right. I'm disconnecting that chat and I'm going to, you know what? I think I'm going to go have a drink. I'm going to do that. I will see you all very soon.